Good evening, dear listener. Tonight we walk into the shadowed heart of Victorian London, into an alley where rain drips quietly from broken gutters, where the stones are slick with more than water, and where a young life has been carved apart with a cold, precise cruelty. William North, a detective, has seen death before, but nothing like this, nothing this deliberate, nothing this wrong. Rain whispered against the windows of the station like a secret no one wanted to hear. It had been falling since late afternoon, turning the streets of London into long black mirrors that reflected gaslight and shadow. Now, deep into the evening, the city outside seemed more water than stone, more smoke than flesh. Inside the station, the air smelled of damp wool, stale tobacco, ink, and tired men. Detective William North sat at his desk with a cooling cup of tea beside a stack of reports he had no wish to read. The lamp on his desk cast a yellow halo over the scattered papers, leaving the corners of the room in comfortable gloom. He was in his early 40s now, though the grey at his temples and the lines around his eyes told a harder story. His coat hung on the back of his chair, still speckled with the remnants of earlier rain. His tie was tugged slightly loose, his shirt collar open. The evening had been quiet so far. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that always made William uneasy. London never truly slept. When it seemed to, it was only because something worse was waking up. The door to the main room swung open with a wet creak. A uniformed constable stepped inside, hat dripping, cloak heavy with rain. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, his breath visible in short white puffs. He looked straight at William. "Detective North, sir," he said, voice tight. "There has been a killing. East End, Whitechapel Way. Killing." William felt his tired mind sharpen at once, like steel pulled across a stone. The background murmur of the station seemed to quiet, as if the whole room leaned closer to hear. He stood slowly, joints protesting after too many hours sitting. "What sort of killing?" he asked. The constable hesitated, eyes flicking toward the floor. "A woman, sir," he said. "Working girl, by the look of it. Found in an alley. She was not just killed. She was cut. Badly." William watched the young man's throat move as he swallowed. "How long ago?" William asked. "Body was found no more than half an hour past," the constable said. "Patrolman on the beat raised the alarm. The sergeant sent me straight here." William nodded once, curt and automatic. He reached for his coat. From the desk across the room, Charles Whitkins pushed his chair back and stood. Charles was in his 30s, a few years younger than William, with a friendly face and the sort of open expression that made witnesses trust him. His hair was still thick and dark, his moustache neatly trimmed. He had ink on his fingers and a half-written report in front of him. "A new one," Charles said, his tone flattening. "At this hour?" "So it seems," William answered. "Come on, bring your notebook." Charles grabbed his coat and hat, slipping his notebook and pencil into an inner pocket with quick, practiced movements. He shot William a look that held both curiosity and dread. The two detectives followed the constable to the door. At the threshold, the chill outside reached in like a hand, brushing their faces with damp, cold fingers. Rain met them the moment they stepped out. It drummed on the brim of their hats, slid down their collars, and patterned the stones at their feet. Coaches rattled past on the slick street, wheels hissing through puddles. Gas lamps burned behind glass globes, each one surrounded by a halo of mist. They began walking east. The city wrapped around them in layers of soot and shadow. Tall brick buildings rose on either side, their windows dark or dim, curtains drawn tight against the weather. Smoke from countless hearths mingled with the fog, making the air thick and faintly bitter. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the hour, its chime muffled by rain. Charles pulled his coat tighter against his chest. "Terrible hour for a killing," he muttered. "There is no good hour," William replied. They walked in silence for a few moments, boots striking the wet stones in a steady rhythm. The constable walked ahead, guiding them through the maze of streets with the quick surety of a man used to night patrol. William watched the water streak down the lamplight, turning each flame into a shaky, golden smear. He had done this walk before. Different nights, different victims, different alleys, the same chill, the same creeping sense that the city itself was watching. Charles broke the silence first. "Anna says I should not answer these late calls," he said, attempting a light tone. "Says it is bad for the nerves. Hers, not mine." "Anna always had more sense than you," William said. Charles chuckled, breath fogging in front of him. "She does at that. She says the baby kicks most at night. Perhaps the little one already hears the city and does not like it." "That will be the third," William said. "Third, yes," Charles replied, and despite the rain, his voice warmed. "We did not plan for so many. They seem to find us all the same. Samuel is already demanding a pony. He can barely walk without falling over his own feet, but he wants a pony. And little Rose thinks the new baby will arrive already talking. She says she will teach it to sing." William allowed a faint smile. "You will need a larger house," he said. "We can barely fill the one we have today," Charles answered. "Though if Anna keeps finding stray cats and injured birds, we might need a farm." His laugh was soft, full of fondness. He turned his head slightly. "And you, William? How is home?" The question slid into the space between them like a knife through cloth. William kept his eyes on the street ahead. Rain tapped on his hat. The smell of wet horses and cold smoke mingled in the damp air. "Fine," he said. "The children are well." "That is good," Charles said. "And Clara?" William felt his jaw tighten for a heartbeat. "Fine," he said again. Fine. What a useless word. Clara had not been fine in a long time. Their home had once been full of her laughter, of her singing as she did the washing, of the soft hum she made when she read by the window. Now the house was quiet more often than not. When he came in late, he found her sitting by the fire, with her hands folded in her lap, eyes dark and distant. Their conversations had become short, brittle things. Sometimes she did not speak at all. He heard her voice in his memory. "Work has changed you, William. You come home with shadows in your eyes. You drink too much. You look at us as if we are ghosts, and the corpses are the real people." He had argued, of course, said that someone had to do this work. Someone had to look at the worst of humanity and drag justice out of it. Said that it was noble, necessary, important. But late at night, staring at the bottom of a bottle, he had wondered if she was right. He could remember the last time he had played with the children in the yard. He had thrown a ball with his son only 2 weeks ago. Had he not? Or was that last month? The 1 year blurred into the next. Faces of the dead overlaid themselves between his memories of birthdays and holidays. Sometimes he saw blood where there had been candles. The rain grew heavier, pattering more fiercely against the stones. Charles glanced at him, sidelong. "We have been doing this work a long time," he said gently. "Cases like this, they get inside a man's head. Anna says I should leave the job before it swallows me whole." "Do you plan to?" William asked. Charles gave a small smile. "Not yet," he said. "I still believe in what we do. I still believe we make some small difference. Keep worse darkness at bay. Though when I hold Samuel or Rose, I do feel different. Softer. Like I want to build walls between them and the world." "That is your duty," William said. "And yours," Charles replied softly. The words landed between them with more weight than the rain. William lifted his chin, watching as a hansom cab rattled by, its wheels splashing through a puddle that sent cold water up against his boots. A woman in a shawl hurried along the opposite side of the street, head bowed, hands tucked under her arms. A drunk sang something half-remembered to himself at the mouth of a nearby alley, his voice wavering and strange. Duty. Yes, he had a duty. To the city, to justice, to the dead girl they were about to see, to Clara, to his children. He was not sure he could serve all of those duties at once. The constable led them over a small bridge where the water beneath ran dark and fast, carrying bits of refuse along with it. The smell rising from the river was sour, damp, and old. William drew his coat closer. Beyond the bridge, the streets narrowed. The buildings pressed closer together, leaning in until the gap of sky between them became a thin grey ribbon. Laundry lines sagged overhead, their wet cloths flapping in the wind. Stray dogs rooted through piles of refuse. The rain did little to wash away the smell of rot and privation that clung to the East End. The gaslights here were fewer and farther between. Their glow left stretches of shadow between them, like pockets where anything could hide. "This part of town never sleeps," Charles said quietly. "No," William answered, "but it does a good impression of a nightmare." As they walked, voices reached them from behind shuttered windows. An argument in one house, a lullaby in another, laughter somewhere far off, too loud, too sharp, edged with desperation. They passed the open door of a tavern, light spilling out onto the street in a warm, golden rectangle. The smell of ale and sweat and fried onions drifted from within. A woman leaned in the doorway, cloak pulled close around her thin shoulders, eyes scanning the street for potential customers. She watched the detectives pass with weary interest. William wondered, just for a moment, if the dead woman they were about to see had stood in just such a doorway the night before. If she had watched the rain and the cabs and the shadows with the same dull resignation, unaware that she would not see the morning. The constable raised a hand. "Here, sir," he called over his shoulder. "The alley is just ahead." They turned. The entrance to the alley was a narrow gap between two leaning buildings, so tight that only one man could pass at a time. The cobblestones were uneven and slick with rainwater. A single gas lamp nearby tried and failed to fully penetrate the darkness within. The smell wafting from the gap was a mixture of wet brick, rotting food, and something metallic William had known too often. Blood. He could feel it waiting for them. They paused at the mouth of the alley. Charles took a slow breath in through his nose and out through his mouth, as if steeling himself. He reached for his notebook, fingers trembling just slightly. William S. face stayed still, calm, unreadable. Inside, a familiar tightening spread through his chest. Not fear, not exactly. A coiling of focus, a readiness. He reached up and adjusted the brim of his hat. "Well then," he said quietly, "shall we go meet her?" The rain pattered steadily around them, washing the grime from the stones, but never quite touching the darkness that waited deeper inside. Together, they stepped into the alley. The alley narrows almost immediately, forcing William and Charles to walk single file. The rain does not reach the ground here, only thin streams dripping from sagging roofs, tapping on the stones like clock hands in the dark. The deeper they walk, the colder the air becomes, and the heavier the scent. Something metallic, something sour, something unmistakably human. William breathes in slowly, letting the smell settle in his lungs before he exhales. He has walked into scenes like this too many times across his career, scenes that stay with him in dreams, in the quiet moments between cases, in the way he sometimes looks at his own hands and wonders if they will ever feel clean again. Charles slows ahead of him. "Good God," he whispers. A lantern placed on an overturned crate illuminates the far corner of the alley. Two constables stand nearby, their faces pale beneath their helmets, their boots splashed with mud and something darker. One lowers his gaze as the detectives approach, as if ashamed of what lies behind him. The other stares fixedly at the opposite wall, jaw tight, refusing to look again. The body lies a few feet ahead. William steps closer. The rainwater here gathers in shallow puddles, reflecting the lantern's light in trembling ripples. A cold wind blows down the alley, shifting loose paper, lifting the corners of discarded rags, carrying the faint smell of refuse and rotting food. But none of it draws William's eye. Only her. The girl cannot be more than 17. Her dress is torn, soaked through, clinging to her thin frame like wilted cloth. Her hair, dark and tangled, spreads across the stones in a wet fan. Her face is pale, too pale, the kind of pale that comes not from fear, but from blood loss. Her eyes are half open, staring upward at the narrow slice of sky, as if surprised to find no stars there. But the worst is not her expression. It is what has been done to her. Her abdomen is opened cleanly, almost surgically, the edges of the wound disturbingly precise. There is no jagged tearing, as William has seen with knife fights or drunken brawls. This was deliberate, measured, an incision made with a calm, steady hand. Organs displaced, blood pooled dark and glossy, still glistening in places despite the rain. Charles steps back a half pace, covering his mouth with his hand. "Jesus," he whispers, his voice cracking. Who would do this to a girl? Who could? William kneels beside the body, boots sinking slightly into the damp grit. His coat brushes against a patch of blood, but he does not flinch. His expression remains still focused, unreadable. He moves the lantern slightly to cast better light. The girl's throat bears a deep slice, nearly ear to ear. Her hands are clenched tightly, nails breaking into her palms as if she fought or tried to grab at something in her last moments. Charles looks away. One of the constables approaches hesitantly. "Sir," he says to William, "she was found by Mr. Hargreaves, the bar owner, down the street." He heard something, thought it was cats fighting. When he came to look, he found her like this. William nods once. "Where is he?" Waiting outside his establishment, the constable replies, shaken but willing to speak. William stands slowly, wiping rain from his brow. "Cover her," he says quietly. "Then stay here until the coroner arrives." The constables nod, relief flooding their expressions as they finally step forward to drape a sheet over the young girl. Charles lingers near the wall, breathing slowly through his nose, trying to steady himself. William glances at him. You all right? Charles nods, though the tightness in his jaw says otherwise. I have seen terrible things, William. But nothing like this. Nothing so calculated. William looks back at the covered body. It is anger, he murmurs. Cold, controlled. A man who does not kill in rage, but in purpose. Charles shudders. That is worse. Yes, William says. Much worse. They leave the alley, stepping back into the open street where rain falls freely again. The sound is heavier now, drumming on rooftops, running in small rivers along the gutter edges. The bar where Mr. Hargreaves waits is only a few doors down. Its windows glow faintly, warm light spilling through warped glass. But the warmth does not reach the man standing outside under the awning, arms crossed tightly around himself. He is in his late 40s, with thinning hair and a face creased from years of drink and worry. His apron is stained with ale, and his eyes dart nervously between the detectives and the alley behind them. Mr. Hargreaves, William says. Aye, the man replies, voice trembling. You found the girl? Yes, sir. The man wipes rain from his brow. I was closing up, heard a sound, like something falling, or fighting, or he trails off, swallowing. You saw nothing before that? Charles asks, more gently now after the horror in the alley. No, Hargreaves says. Never saw her come by earlier. Never saw anyone else either. The street was quiet. Do you know her? William asks. Have you seen her around? Hargreaves looks away. She was one of the night girls, he answers reluctantly. Works down by Hanbury Street. Comes by sometimes for scraps. Harmless sort. Young. Always polite. William nods slowly. Thank you, he says. Hargreaves lowers his eyes, shoulders shaking. Whoever did that to her, he whispers, is a devil, walking in human skin. The wind picks up, rattling the sign above the bar door. William turns away, jaw tightening. We should head back, he says. Finish our notes before they wash away in this storm. They begin walking again, boots slapping through puddles. The rain washes the last traces of blood from the mouth of the alley, sending thin red trails down the stones until they vanish into the drains. Charles walks silently beside William, his face pale. This is a dark one, William, he says quietly. I feel it in my bones. William does not answer immediately. He listens to the sound of the rain, to the distant clatter of carriage wheels, to the lonely call of a train whistle far across the river. He feels something stirring in his chest. Not fear, not disgust. Anger, cold, sharp anger. How can someone do something this horrible? He murmurs, more to himself than to Charles. Charles glances at him, studying his face. What do you think? He asks. William's eyes narrow slightly. I think this is not the last, he says. A man who kills like that, with that kind of precision, does not stop with one. Lightning flashes somewhere beyond the rooftops, casting a brief white glare over London. Thunder rolls in the distance. The city feels uneasy tonight. William feels it too. People hurry along the streets, shoulders hunched, coats pulled tight, faces pale as they glance down dark alleys. The wind seems to whisper between the buildings. Doors close faster. Windows shutter quickly. The scent of fear clings to the air, thick as coal smoke. As they near the station again, Charles slows. This will bring terror, he says quietly. People will be afraid to walk the streets, especially the women of the night. Yes, William replies, and the man responsible will enjoy that fear. He stops under the flickering gas lamp outside the station door. The flame inside wavers, struggling to stay lit against the wind. We have seen our share of killers, William says softly. But this one, he is different. He cuts not out of passion, but control. He mutilates not out of frenzy, but intention. Charles nods, rubbing his hands together for warmth. We will find him, he says. We have to. William looks back toward the east, toward the narrow, twisting streets, toward the shadows where the rain cannot reach. Yes, he says, we must. But inside him something darker settles, something he does not speak aloud. They are facing a killer unlike any he has ever chased. And the fear rising through London tonight was only the beginning. The station felt different now. It carried a weight that had not been present a week ago, a heaviness that settled in the corners, lingered in the air, clung to every tired face inside. Conversations halted whenever William entered. Papers were shuffled with anxious hands. Everyone walked faster, spoke quieter, breathed shorter. The city was afraid, and fear had a way of leaking into the walls. By the third murder, the entire department knew they were dealing with more than a single crime. By the fifth, there was no denying the truth. London had a monster. William sat hunched over his desk, fingers wrapped around a mug of cold ale he had forgotten to drink. A stack of files lay spread before him. Sketches, victim reports, blood-soaked clothing, pieces sealed in wax paper, witness statements scribbled by trembling hands. Charles sat across from him at another desk, flipping through his notes for the 100th time. His face had grown paler since the first case, the cheerful spark in his eyes dimming a little more each day. The rain had stopped outside, replaced by a wind that rattled the windows with cold, metallic tapping. 2 weeks had passed since the first girl, then another, and another, each one more horrific than the last, each one found in the same maze of alleys, always before dawn. Charles rubbed his forehead. He is escalating, he murmured, becoming bolder. The wounds grow worse, more deliberate. William stared at the sketches in front of him. Lines of charcoal on paper captured the shape of wounds too precise to be drunk violence, too controlled for happenstance. The killer was skilled, steady, cold as winter rain. He is practicing, William said, perfecting his method. Charles closed his notebook with a soft thud. We need something, William. Anything. A pattern, a clue, a weapon, a face, a whisper. Anything at all. William nodded slowly, but he had nothing. They had nothing. The frustration hung around his neck like iron chains. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping across the floorboards. We should eat, Charles said cautiously. Clear our heads. Think straight. William hesitated, jaw tightening. Then he nodded. The small tavern near the station glowed warmly, lanterns flickering in their sconces, the hearth rumbling low. The smell of roasted meat and ale drifted through the room, carrying the faint comfort of normalcy. But even here, conversation revolved around the murders. 2 women whispered in the corner, clutching shawls to their chests. A man at the bar swore he had seen the killer's shadow. Another insisted it was a butcher gone mad. Someone else said it must be a doctor. How else could he cut so cleanly? Fear lived in every word. Even Charles seemed unnerved. He took a long sip from his tankard. If this goes on much longer, Anna will beg me to quit. You would not, William said. Charles shook his head. No, but God knows I want to. William drank silently, staring into the dark amber liquid. How many nights had ended like this? 2 ales, 3, 4 on the worst days, always drinking to steady the nerves, soothe the mind, push away the images. He had promised Clara he would stop, promised her he would come home earlier, promised he would not drown himself in this job the way he had been doing. But promises were easy, keeping them far harder. Charles set down his tankard and leaned closer. "You have been quiet these past days," he said, "quieter than usual." William did not look up. Instead, he tapped his finger against the wood of the table, steady and rhythmic. "I am thinking," he said. "About the killer?" Charles asked gently. "About everything." Charles studied him. "Your family?" William stiffened. He forced a small shrug. "Clara is tired," he said. "The children miss me. I come home late. I suppose I have not been myself." Charles gave him a sympathetic look. This case would drain any man. William bristled. "It is not the case," he said. "It is life itself." He had not meant to say it, but it hung there, suspended between them. Charles frowned. "You should talk to Clara." "I have," William said tightly. "She thinks the job has changed me. She says I come home with ghosts in my eyes." Charles hesitated. Then softly, "Has it?" William looked at him sharply. The question cut deeper than any knife. He opened his mouth to answer, but a constable burst through the tavern door, panting. "Sirs, another one." William and Charles froze. The constable swallowed hard. "Another woman," he said, voice shaking. "Same as the others. This one in Miller S. Court." William S. fist tightened around his tankard. No more dinner. No more rest. The darkness was calling again. He threw a few coins on the table and rose. "Come on," he said. Weeks passed. Bodies piled up. London grew colder, not just from the approaching winter, but from the terror that soaked into its bones. Women refused to walk alone at night. Men carried sticks and clubs. Newspapers printed violent headlines. Political meetings erupted into screaming matches about the safety of the streets. The killer had become a ghost, an idea, a myth whispered across every pub and street corner. William and Charles followed every lead, questioned every witness, examined reports until their eyes blurred. But still, the killings continued. The worst part was the precision, the surgical cruelty. It felt almost intentional, as if the killer wanted them to see his work. As November crept in, flakes of snow began to fall from the grey sky, dusting the streets in a thin white coat that somehow made the blood appear brighter. William walked through the slums with Charles beside him, both wrapped in thick coats. The city looked quieter now, but not peaceful, like a wounded animal curled in the corner. Charles kicked a stone across the path. 22 victims, he said quietly. 22, William. We cannot keep failing like this. William S. jaw clenched. We are not failing, he said. We are searching. Searching for a ghost, Charles replied bitterly. A ghost who walks faster than we do. William stopped. Snowflakes landed on his hat, melting instantly. You think we should give up? No, Charles said. But I think we are drowning. And you? He hesitated. You are drowning fastest. William stared at him. Charles lowered his voice. You drink more than you used to. You barely go home. Clara is worried sick. William turned away. Clara. Her voice still echoed in his memory. We need you, William. Not your shadow. Not what this job has turned you into. He exhaled. This case is all we have, he said quietly. If we do not solve it, no one will. Snow crunched beneath their boots. Charles nodded reluctantly. We keep going, he said. Together. But the murders only grew stranger. Witnesses described a tall figure in black. Some said he moved like a shadow, quiet, quick, almost floating. Others swore his eyes glinted red in the lamplight. Still others claimed he carried a Dr. S bag, though no one had seen what was inside, but no one ever saw his face. And each time William arrived at a crime scene, anger filled him like fire. How dare this man keep killing in his city? How dare he taunt them with silence, with vanishing footprints, with bodies left like cruel messages? William's obsession grew. His drinking worsened. His sleep became jagged and short. Clara spoke less. His children looked at him with uncertain eyes. His home became a place of brief shadows rather than warmth. But he kept going. He had to. For justice, for the women, for the city, for the man he once was, before drink and death hollowed him out. And then one night, the night when everything changed, he and Charles entered a tavern neither had visited before. A place warm with lamplight, quiet with few patrons, smelling of stew, damp boots, and cheap ale. They sat together at a small table in the back. Charles nursed one beer. William had two, then another. His stomach burned. His mind swirled with cold determination. "We are running in circles," Charles said softly. "Our boss says if we do not find something soon—" "I know what he says," William snapped. Charles fell silent. William rubbed his face, sighing. "Sorry," he murmured. I cannot shake this feeling that we are close, that he is near." Charles hesitated. "You need rest," he said. "You need time with Clara, with your children." William stared into his drink. "I need a murderer," he whispered. Charles stood eventually, pulling on his coat. "I am heading home," he said. "Come with me." William shook his head. "I will stay a bit longer." Charles nodded, placed a hand on his shoulder, and left. William sat alone. The tavern grew quiet. The few patrons filtered out. The bartender snuffed a lantern. And then William saw it. A figure, outside. Tall, wrapped in black, moving into the alley beside the tavern. William's breath stopped. His heart hammered. The man's silhouette glided like smoke, barely disturbing the snow. Then William saw something else. A woman. A young woman, turning the corner into the alley. And the figure moving behind her, silent, quick, intentional. Then the flicker of steel. The woman jerked. William felt his stomach drop. It was him, the Ripper, the killer they had been chasing for months, right there, right in front of him. William surged to his feet, knocking over his chair. Snow swirled past the window as he stumbled toward the door. The bartender looked up in alarm, but William did not speak, could not speak. The only word in his mind was, "Now, now, now." He flung open the door and ran into the night. The cold slapped him in the face. The snow crunched under his boots. His head spun from drink. But none of that mattered. He had finally seen him, and he would not let the devil disappear again. William's boots slammed against the icy cobblestones as he tore into the alley, his breath tearing in and out of him in ragged bursts. Snow whipped into his eyes. The tavern's warm lamplight died behind him, swallowed instantly by the dark. Ahead, the killer or silhouette moved with impossible smoothness, a tall figure draped in a long black coat, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, a mask covering his face in stark, unnatural shadows. The young woman he had stabbed twisted downward into the snow, her cry muffled into silence. "Stop!" William shouted, voice cracking with fury. "Police! Stop!" The figure did not run at first. Instead, he paused just for a heartbeat, turning his head back toward William. Two eyes glowed faintly from behind the mask, red, reflecting light or something else. something William did not understand and did not care to. The eyes stared straight through him, cold and calm and cruel, as if weighing the detective essence soul in a single glance. Then he ran, and William followed. He sprinted despite the ale burning through his blood, despite the dizziness threatening to twist the alley beneath him. He ran because this was his moment. This was the man, the shadow, the monster, the Ripper. Snow kicked up under his boots as he chased the figure down the winding alley, past barrels and crates, past frozen puddles, past doors bolted tight against the night. The killer moved quickly, too quickly, his coat sweeping behind him like wings. William pushed harder. His breath turned to fire. His legs screamed. His heart hammered with desperation. "You will not get away," he shouted. The figure darted left, slipping into a wider street. Gas lamps flickered overhead, their weak glow casting long, warped shadows across the snow. William caught a glimpse of the bloody knife in the killer's hand as it reflected the lamplight, a sharp glint of steel, almost elegant in its cruelty. The killer turned again, racing toward the docks. William followed, stumbling slightly on a patch of ice, arms flailing before he regained his balance and kept running. His vision blurred, but the figure remained clear, a black streak against the pale snow. Ahead, the Thames loomed like a mouth of darkness, its cold water swallowing the moonlight. Ships creaked in their moorings, ropes clattered against wooden posts. Fog rolled low over the river's surface, thick enough to hide 100 sins. The killer sprinted along the edge of the docks, boots pounding against wet planks. William gained on him. "Stop!" he roared. "Drop the knife!" The figure reached a narrow storage yard bordered by high brick walls on 3 sides. Cornered. William's heart surged. He slowed just enough to pull his revolver from his coat hands, trembling, breath shuddering, and pointed it at the killer. "Turn around," William shouted. "Show me your hands." The man stopped. He stood perfectly still, back to William. The only sound was the river's restless breathing and the faint whistle of winter wind through the ropes overhead. Snow settled on the killer's hat and shoulders, unmoving, as if he were a statue carved from the night itself. William edged closer, gun steadying in both hands. "I said, turn around," he commanded, voice low, lethal. "Do it now." The figure obeyed, slowly, deliberately. He pivoted, revealing the mask fully black, tight-fitting, smooth like leather stretched over bone. The eye holes were rimmed in shadow, but the eyes behind them glowed with a dark red shimmer, a reflection, perhaps, of the lamps, perhaps of William's lantern, which swung weakly at his side, or perhaps something else. The killer tilted his head slightly, a subtle gesture, curious, amused. William's stomach churned. "Drop the knife," he growled, "right now." The figure raised the blade slightly, letting it catch a strand of light. His head tilted the other way, mocking him. William stepped forward. "I will shoot," he warned. "I swear to God I will." The figure's chest rose and fell, once quiet, steady. Then his eyes narrowed, and even with the mask hiding his mouth, William knew he was smiling. The killer lifted one hand, not the one holding the knife, and reached blindly toward the wall beside him. His fingers brushed something hidden in the shadows. A rope, thick, coiled, suspended from a pulley above. "Do not," William snapped. But the man jerked the rope sharply. A heavy wooden rowboat, suspended on hooks above the yard for repairs, plummeted downward. William had only enough time to look up. A massive dark shape, falling snow whipping aside air, splitting his heart, leaping into his throat. And then, impact. A crushing weight slammed into him. The world cracked white, then black. The gun flew from his hand. The snow beneath him turned red. His breath left his lungs in a violent burst. He collapsed backward onto the freezing ground, vision splitting into fragments like broken glass. He heard footsteps, slow, measured, echoing faintly through the roaring in his ears. The masked figure stepped past the fallen boat, its wooden frame still rocking from the fall. He paused beside William. Snowflakes drifted onto the detective's face as he blinked, struggling to keep consciousness from slipping away. The killer crouched, close enough that William could see the faint rise and fall of his chest behind the dark coat. Those terrible eyes stared into his, not with rage, not with triumph, but with a kind of chilling acknowledgement, a silent message. You came closer than anyone, but not close enough. William tried to lift a hand, to raise his voice, to say something, anything, to demand an answer, or call for help, or beg the universe to let him stand one last time. Nothing came out. The killer rose slowly, turning toward the river. He walked through the snow with calm, fluid steps, disappearing into the fog that curled thick around the docks. His silhouette dissolved like smoke swallowed by night. William lay frozen beneath the fallen boat, blood warming the snow around his head. His breaths grew faint. The cold seeped deeper. The world blurred again. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was that thin, black shadow drifting into the winter fog, the last known sighting of the man the world would come to call Jack the Ripper. And the rest, dear listener, became a legend.